Allow me to introduce myself.
I am the last sane sports fan.
I am a genius by trade.
I just knew too much. Does that make me crazy? Does that make me crazy? Does that make me crazy? Possibly.
Hello everyone and welcome once again to The View from the Midwest. Well, there's been interesting news coming down the pike in terms of St. Louis news, as apparently the St. Louis Cardinals have been confirmed as cheaters. Now, they have their day in court and all that kind of thing, and everything is still under investigation. This is all very preliminary, as the report basically just came out today. It is being reported by the New York Times, who is a very reputable source, and basically it's under investigation by the FBI, so that all but says that the Cardinals have done something wrong. Basically what it boils down to, for any of you who have not heard about it yet, I'm sure most of you who watch these videos who live in the area are already aware of some of the details, but it basically boils down to this. In and around 2011, they had an employee named Jeff Lunhow who worked for the organization from 2003 until 2011, and he was one of the big keys for the Cardinals' success during that time period. Now, obviously, he's not the only reason the Cardinals won during that time period. They've had excellent general managers in Walt Jocketty and John Mozeliak, and but they've also had a good scouting staff, and Lunhow was part of that front office staff, and he was credited with a lot of the good scouting that the Cardinals produced during that time period, in which they started looking at things in a different way, and Lunhow was one of the big proponents of that in terms of looking at statistics in a different way and looking at analyzing players in different ways, and really kind of getting the Cardinals back on their feet in terms of winning championships. Now, he is not by any means the only reason that the St. Louis Cardinals won during those time periods. Again, they won prior to him being there. They've won after him being there. Now, obviously, 2011 being their last World Series championship does raise a few flags with his departure to the Houston Astros, and he has managed to turn them around. Right now, they're in first place in their division. Whether or not they hang on or not is a whole different matter, because they're a fairly young team and everything, but they've obviously got the pieces that he has put in place. But it just raises that question, and it's basically putting the Cardinals in the same light with the Patriots, which is something that, as a local fan, it is extremely disappointing, because St. Louis fans for years have lambasted the Patriots as cheaters, and they stole our Super Bowl, and they did this and that. Well, all of a sudden now everybody outside of St. Louis has the opportunity to do that to the local team, because you don't know how far this goes. Right now it's just being reported as team officials are implicated in this quote-unquote hacking procedure into the Houston offices to gain access to stats and player reports and scouting reports and all kinds of things like that. On the one hand, you have to blame a little bit on Lunhow, because this wasn't a sophisticated hack. This wasn't somebody who had knowledge of the internet and all things hacking related, and cracking passwords and breaking down firewalls and all things like that. Basically, Lunhow used the exact same passwords that he had when he was with the Cardinals when he moved over to the Houston Astros. So whoever knew his passwords in the Cardinals office just had managed to think, oh, well, let's see if that works out. And it happened to work out. It's a very disappointing scenario, because regardless of who did it, whether it was at the very top with the ownership or John Mozeliak, or at the very bottom with some lowly scout, it doesn't really matter. It paints the Cardinals in an incredibly damaging light, one which kind of goes against their whole mantra. This whole Cardinal way all of a sudden seems like a load of BS. Because if they're no better than any other team, in fact, they may be worse than plenty of other teams in terms of how they've conducted their business, it's extremely damaging to the team who has prided themselves on doing things the right way their entire history, and now all of a sudden we don't know how often they've done things the right way. The best case scenario right now for the St. Louis Cardinals, and it's still extremely damaging to the team image from anybody outside the city, especially in the national media, as they will carry this on for as long as they can, as long as there's new information coming out. The best case scenario right now for the St. Louis Cardinals is that it was some low-level employee who couldn't make up his mind about a certain player or players, who was being asked for an opinion, a scouting report perhaps, something like that, couldn't make up his mind, thought, oh, well, Lundhow was really good at figuring out these kind of things. I'll just kind of see what he's got going on in his system right now, and I'll present that information to the general manager, John Mozeliak, as my information, and we'll go from there. It's not a good situation, because all of a sudden you've implicated the general manager in something that he may not have been a part of, but he might have used the information. That's another big question as we go forward, is how did this information get used? If somebody just kind of looked into the situation, saw what Lundhow was saying, and then it never really went any further than that, then it's still a bad implication. You should not be cheating. You should not be hacking into other teams' systems. But ultimately it proved to do nothing. Now, if the information was used to potentially steal draft picks, if you had a pick ahead of Houston or something like that, or potentially try to scout a player and lure them away if they were a free agent instead of going to Houston, then all of a sudden you're in a whole heap of trouble right there. And that is being kind, to say the least. So, I mean, this is going to be an ongoing story, and unfortunately for those in the area, it's not going to end very well, I think, for the St. Louis Cardinals, whether or not they lose draft picks, whether or not people go to jail. I mean, it's an incredibly difficult thing for the organization to have to deal with, especially when they've got the best record in baseball for a while now. They're dealing with so many injuries. They've managed to overcome and conquer. But to have extra distractions is not something that the team needs right now. It shouldn't affect the team too much, because this is all upper level stuff. But still, when you get media scrutiny on the organization, all of a sudden you just get people coming in from all sorts of media outlets, all of a sudden attending Cardinals games just to ask some stupid question that a player has no opinion on. And that ends up being a distraction. So from the top down, this is really a bad situation for the St. Louis Cardinals, and I don't think it's going to be resolved anytime soon. They do say that the investigation is wrapping up, but this has been ongoing, apparently, according to the report, for at least a year, and it's going to be really interesting to see how things play out. That is the view from the Midwest. What are your views on today's topic? Do you think the Cardinals are just downright cheaters, or do you think that potentially this is just one of those things that some lower level employee was trying to save his job, and it ends up looking bad on the team regardless? Leave a comment in the comment section. If you're watching on YouTube, as I said, comment, rate, and subscribe. If you're watching on Facebook, leave a comment there as well, and share it around, and we'll keep these on rolling. But until the next time, I'll see you then.